northern Peru, 1987. Archaeologist Walter Alva uncovers the lost tomb of the Lord of Sipán. Intact and untouched by thieves, this burial place is considered one of the richest in the world.
The Lord of Sipán was a Moche king up in the Lambayeque region of Peru along the coast. They found gold and silver and all these incredibly beautiful artifacts and textiles and art.
Peruvian archaeologists, they sometimes call it the King Tut's tomb of South America. The objects that they found in these tombs were unusual.
The burial chamber was filled with artifacts that included ceramic pots, gold, copper, and silver utensils, and feather ornaments some researchers believe were intended to accompany and protect the Lord of Sipán in the afterlife. Some archaeologists suggest that several of his servants, wives, and consorts were sacrificed, and their bodies were placed inside to accompany him into the afterlife.
We see that Lord Sipán is not buried in isolation. We see that he is buried with some other people. And so when we extrapolate from this and when we realize that other cultures have been doing the same kind of schematic, what we're seeing is that these people believed that the afterlife was very much a physical place. It was believed that he would have needed some of these helpers. It is believed that he would probably want to be reunited, if not united, with his most immediate family and some of his most trusted advisors.
Among the incredible treasures buried with the Lord of Sipán were strange statues that some researchers believe are evidence of extraterrestrial beings.
As well as servants and all the artifacts, they even found these strange, kind of weird anthropomorphized figurines that some people say resemble beings from other worlds.
They show bug-eyed people who do not look like a normal human. So you have at Sipán really a tomb that seems to show extraterrestrial beings, anthropomorphic beings that are half animal, half human, and people who don't look like a normal human being, that look like extraterrestrials.
Lord of Sipán's tomb has some very interesting relics that were found within his burial. Were these beings that were going to help him go into the afterlife, possibly back into space or into the heavens?
The Lord of Sipán's disciples believed that he was not a mere mortal, but actually half god and half man.
But specifically what is of interest is that he has a face mask which is made of gold, and his body largely is dressed with copper shielding. So all of a sudden we see somebody whose that body is meant to resemble clearly something else, a shining one, the divine being which he was once believed to be, but also which in death he was believed to once again become.
Was the Lord of Sipán really half man, half god, as his followers believed? And might the figurines found in his grave really represent the ancient ruler's extraterrestrial origins? If so, is it possible that this tomb, like the ones found in Egypt, really served as a portal to the stars? Ancient astronaut theorists say yes, and believe more evidence can be found by looking at the boat-shaped coffins and strange burial rituals of the ancient Torajan people. South Sulawesi, Indonesia. Here can be found the cave tombs of the Tana Toraja, the site of a complex funeral ritual that dates back to 3000 BC. The Torajan people believe death is a gradual process toward the afterlife.
Many cultures believe in an afterlife, something that goes on beyond the physical bodies. The Toraja people in Indonesia are very interesting and unusual because among the most elaborate rituals they have are not rituals of life, but for death. They have incredible ceremonies when people die. They have huge feasts, and they have these incredible celebrations for the dead.
The Torajan people put the dead into these special coffins, which are also like a model of a spaceship. And then they inter them up on these cliffs. And their beliefs, too, are that ultimately the dead are returning to the stars, and that they, as a people, will also return to the stars as well.
Standing in the most honored locations of the greatest cities on Earth are massive stone obelisks pointing to the sky.
When you look at true power cities around the world, Paris, London, New York, Washington, D.C., they all have one thing in common: obelisks.
There are obelisks at key locations in some of the most important cities on the planet. In a key square in Istanbul, there is an ancient obelisk from Egypt with hieroglyphics. Another is in Paris at the Place de la Concorde, which is in the largest square in Paris.
Although they are found across the globe, the vast majority of the world's obelisks have a single point of origin: ancient Egypt. In fact, most obelisks that adorn major cities were originally part of Egypt's ancient landscape.
In ancient Egypt, there were over 100 obelisks that were sculpted and erected. Only 9 or 10 of them remain in Egypt, but a lot actually are outside of Egypt.
Obelisks have literally become the spoils of war, where a country invades Egypt or a country overtakes Egypt. And this goes back to Roman times. And they would take obelisks away to erect in their own capital city, whether it was Rome under Roman times or later Constantinople.
The removal of obelisks from Egypt continued right into the 19th century. The Paris obelisk was carried from Luxor in 1833. London purchased its obelisk from Egypt in 1878. Cleopatra's Needle was given to New York as a gift from the Egyptian government in 1881.
Why would you want to move them around and take them to foreign countries? And I think the answer must lie in the fact that they were seen to have an inherent power within them.
The Egyptian obelisk is one of the most unique pieces of architecture in ancient Egypt. Every obelisk you look at, it is a perfect mathematical equation. Geometrically perfect, physics-wise perfect.
They were always made of granite, and they were four-sided and towered upwards and eventually ended in this perfect pyramid.
Most obelisks are found in pairs, often at the entrance to certain temples, and most of the obelisks have beautiful hieroglyphs carved into them.
Most hieroglyphs that are on the obelisks are always the king asking the gods to be there for him on his journey through the afterlife, so they can arrive to the afterlife and live for immortality. And the top was always dedicated to the sun god Ra, one of the most powerful gods in ancient Egypt.
The pyramid-shaped stone on top of each obelisk, called the Benben stone, was a design rooted in Egyptian mythology. The Benben was a vehicle which Atum, the god of all creation, used to travel back and forth between the heavens and earth.
We think of the Benben as a craft because it is believed to have come from the stars originally. When the god Atum arrived on Earth, he arrived in the Benben. When the god Atum left the Earth, he He rose in the Benben and presumably went back to the stars.
Curiously, the ancient Egyptian gods were often depicted as human-like figures who came from the stars and possessed incredible powers. And as far as ancient astronaut theorists are concerned, accounts of gods traveling in the Benben could be a case of misunderstood technology.
We always have to remember that the technological frame of reference that our ancestors had cannot be compared to the technological frame of reference that we have today. Our ancestors perhaps witnessed some type of a craft descending from the sky, out of which these extraterrestrials came and jump-started civilization. And they tried to replicate the vehicles which those gods arrived in.
The Valley of the Kings, Egypt. The Taj Mahal, Agra, India. And King Pakal's tomb, Palenque, Mexico. Spectacular burial sites that date back thousands of years are found across the world. According to mainstream researchers, these locations are the final resting places for ancient leaders. But might they also serve a more profound, perhaps extraterrestrial purpose?
Why do we have the most massive of constructions in the far and distant past? Well, and according to the ancient texts and the ancient traditions, this knowledge was given to our ancestors by the gods.
If the sole function of tombs was to house the dead, then why are virtually all of these connected to notions of spiritual energy, images of astronomy, and a strong belief in the existence of other, arguably more spiritual worlds?
All cultures share this notion of somehow opening a doorway, opening a stargate, opening a gateway to another dimension so the soul can return. We know that it is meant because the soul is going to go on a voyage to the afterlife.
In the ancient world, there was a view that this life that we have, this physical life, is our opportunity to prepare ourselves for a vast destiny that lies beyond this life.
Could ancient tombs really have served another, more extraterrestrial purpose? Perhaps as portals to reunite the deceased with celestial beings. Many ancient astronaut theorists believe the answers can be found by taking a closer look at the mysterious texts of ancient Egypt. Saqqara. Situated on the west bank of the Nile River, 20 miles south of Cairo, this archaeological site is one of the oldest and largest burial grounds in all of Egypt.
Egyptologists called these monuments tombs. But to the Egyptians, they were not tombs. They were gateways to the afterworld. It is through these structures that the king will begin a journey into the underworld in order to face obstacles, dangers, and threats. And if he would overcome these threats, he would be given passage into the afterlife kingdom of Osiris.
Overlooking the immense necropolis lies the pyramid of King Teti, the first ruler of Egypt's 6th dynasty. Teti built his pyramid and an adjoining mortuary temple during his reign more than 4,000 years ago.
I'm walking on what's left of the ancient causeway of King Teti I. That's his pyramid. And here is his very much ruined mortuary temple. Now, this pyramid is very important. It contains the oldest religious writing in the world, the pyramid texts.
According to archaeologists, the pyramid texts are a collection of ancient Egyptian religious writings, that date back to 2400 BC. They contain passages about Osiris, the Egyptian god of the afterlife, and descriptions of how to prepare the pharaoh's remains during his ascent to the heavens after death.
The pyramid texts are all about the stars. It's all about the king becoming a star. It's all about the king ascending to the sky and joining Osiris, Orion in the sky.
But according to ancient astronaut theorists, the pyramid texts didn't only guide the pharaoh to an afterlife. They actually provided instruction on how the pharaoh could travel to other worlds.
What is important to realize is that the ancient Egyptians say that about 25,000 years ago, the gods lived amongst them. Then they disappeared again. What the pyramid texts are saying is that we, the ancient Egyptians specifically of course, are able to reach the gods again. For this we have to die, but once we're dead, we're able to join the gods once again. What we're talking about is some kind of other dimensional travel for the soul to undertake.
Thebes, Egypt. Along the west bank of the Nile River lies the Valley of the Kings. Here, in 1922, archaeologist Howard Carter discovered the 3,000-year-old tomb of the pharaoh Tutankhamun.
When Howard Carter opened the burial chamber of Tutankhamun, it was the first time anybody had seen the burial chamber of a pharaoh.
Untouched since the pharaoh's death in 1333 BC, the tomb was full of the boy king's earthly possessions.
It's very much the idea of having what you would have had in your house in this world with you to be there in the next world. And part of this whole idea of the tomb as a magical machine to bring you into the next world.
To help Tutankhamun on his journey into the afterlife, the walls and ceiling of his burial chamber were decorated with illustrations from the Egyptian sacred Book of the Dead.
The Book of the Dead was a collection of spells relating to the transition between death and rebirth. The basic idea was to provide the dead person with what they needed magically to get through, because there were various trials and tribulations to be faced before you were reborn into the next world. They had to encounter various demons. Everything from giant cockroaches to horrendous beings with knives instead of heads. All sorts of nightmarish visions you had to get through. And one of the things the Book of the Dead does is to explain how you deal with these various demons.
Inside Tutankhamun's tomb, the archaeologists also discovered a sarcophagus with the young king's embalmed body, well preserved, with vital organs removed and sealed in jars. Like many ancient Egyptians, King Tut was mummified based on the belief that upon entering the underworld, his body would regain its powers of movement and speech.
There seems to have been a kind of belief that the stellar or astral aspect of the dead king maintained a contact with the tomb, and that the soul would return back to the physical body.
The ancient Egyptians believed the tomb was the vessel in which the deceased's body, attended by its visiting soul, journeyed to the world beyond the grave.
We today see the idea of being placed in a coffin and put underground as something like simply the disposal of the dead or the burial of the dead. For them, it was far more than this. It was like going back to the primordial womb of a sky goddess whose name was Nuit. And she was represented by the Milky Way. And by doing that, you'll go back to being a star. It was believed that the soul itself could become a star.
The practice of preserving a dead body, or embalming, did not begin with the Egyptians. Embalmed human remains have been found in Chile and Peru, dating to 5000 BC. But what compelled ancient man to preserve their bodies after their deaths? Did they really believe they would return to Earth, body and soul? If so, what had they seen in life that would suggest that such a thing were even possible?
Throughout history, mankind has consistently believed that when they died, they would go to the stars, and the Egyptians believed that too. You have to ask yourself, where did our ancestors get these ideas that on our death we're being transported to the stars or to another world? Wouldn't this have come from extraterrestrials?
The techniques that were used were given to the ancient Egyptians by the gods, the guardians of the sky. Who were these guardians of the sky? Well, according to ancient astronaut theorists, they were flesh and blood extraterrestrials.